Hello, Patreon supporters. This is another one of those. Oh, this is Matt, by the way, if you hadn't guessed, because I'm not doing a forward-facing camera introduction. This is another one of the, not a take-along video this time, but a behind the scenes. And this is pretty much primarily for Is It Beer Yet? What I'm doing is I'm in the midst of upgrading my entire home brewery system. And I thought now would be a good chance before I get everything hooked up and outside and running, and then to the point where it's, well, I guess I could show everything all at once, which I'll probably do at the end. But as I'm building these things one by one, now's a good chance to show you what these things are that I've talked about in that show. I've used the terms, and now you can see what I'm talking about. Kind of putting like the same idea of putting a face to the name, although these are inanimate objects. So start off with the first build that's done. This is the mash tun, and what this does is I put all the grains and the strike water into this cooler. The water is about 150 to 160 degrees, depending on what beer I'm making, and then let that water turn the starches in those grains, in the malts, rather. That's technically what they are, the malted grains, into sugar. And this particular cooler, it's about, not quite an inch, you can see I already have a war injury from my build. It's not quite an inch, about 3/4 inches insulation, has this beefy lid. I mean, I'm not going to put that down because once I push that down, it takes two hands to get off. And between the insulated walls and that lid, it'll hold the temperature, that whatever temperature range I need. In that, let's say it's 154, I'll hold it for an hour. When I'm done, it'll be like 151 at the least. Usually it actually is around 153 or 152. So that's has a lot to do with the Florida weather not getting cold, and that this being some pretty decent insulation. So this is a 10-gallon. I don't know if showing the whole thing actually expresses that. I used to have a 5-gallon. I'm upgrading this to a 10-gallon because I'm to the point where I'm making bigger beers, not bigger batches. It's still all 5 gallons, but bigger beers, more grains, trying to hit a higher alcohol percentage, and I've run out of room to put the amount of grains and the amount of water I need to convert those grains into sugars, fermentable sugars. So I needed to upgrade, so I doubled up on that. So that's why that's the first upgrade in the system, and some what do you call it, changes I made on the cooler. This obviously, maybe not obvious, but it had like a little white spigot that you'd press your thumb down on the black button and the water came out, so I changed that. Right now it's a brass 1/2-inch ball valve with some brass fittings. I'm going to change those to stainless steel, but I have pickled the brass, so for like the first 4 or 5 brews it'll be fine. The surface lead is gone, but I want to get this up and running in a week, so I went with brass right now. I'll get to this in a minute because I have something to say about that. On the inside, let's see if we can see it. Oh, we can, okay. This is a false bottom. That's a 12-inch false bottom. There's like less than a 1/2 inch around the bottom, so it's going to pull every little bit of sugars rinsed off or soaked off, however you do it, however you want to call it, off those grains and then pulled back out through the valve. It's going to be should be a pretty high efficiency on getting those sugars out of those grains. And that tube there, if you can see it, it looks a little cloudy because it's silicone. I had a vinyl tube in there, which the vinyl tube was good up to 175 degrees until it would start to break down at all and maybe put some flavors into the water. Now my strike water is going to do its job at about 155 degrees on an average, but I could possibly put hotter water in there to warm up the mash tun. And though I don't intend to go over 175, I might actually overheat the water and just let it cool in there. So I switched to silicone because that has a temperature range of 355 degrees, and I can't possibly hit that without the water being boiling. So I figured that was a safer choice. It's cheap, it was easy to replace, and that is the inside of the mash tun. So I guess that's about it. Oh wait, they said I was gonna talk about this. Okay, I already have one regret on my decision for my quick disconnects. I'm not, let's see if I can get the other side here. Here we go. The other side of the quick disconnect. I don't regret doing quick disconnects, but I regret putting the female side on all the valves, because here's the other side of the quick disconnect. This will have a hose on it. I can, in fact, I'm already kind of showing. I can't even show you. Basically, I couldn't even do it with one hand. I need 2 hands to use this side, whereas, can I find another? Here we go. So whereas if I put the this female end on the hose, I can easily control it with one hand. So not that big a deal. I mean, when I'm not using the camera, I can use two hands to connect and disconnect, but it would have been easy to put these on the end of the hose. So I want to say I chose this for a reason because I couldn't find all the pieces I needed to put these on the hose and the sizes I needed, but I'm not entirely sure. Next time when I go through replumbing this, which eventually will happen, eventually I'll want to upgrade everything again in one form or another. Maybe not the actual mash tun, but make things a little easier. I'll probably start with the quick disconnects, but still a lot better than fitting a hose. Actually, here we go. Here's from when I took apart. Fitting the hose over the barb, having to cut the hose off, then cut it lengthwise, peel it off every time I wanted to brew. So even though it's a little inconvenient, it's worlds better than I was doing before. So that's the mash tun, and we'll take a look at the next item here. Next piece of the new brewery. It is my new boil kettle, and you can probably see it's stainless steel. It is impossible to get any image of this without a reflection. That is bright. That is new. Oh, I did want to show this. I made a modification on the mash tun. I covered up those Lowe's labels. So the Creature is the name of the brewery. I would have loved to have been able to somehow get the Lowe's emblem off there and kind of cut out this picture and slap it on there, but I couldn't find anything that would say it would do exactly that without possibly damaging the plastic. So instead of damaging the plastic, I figured I'd just throw a sticker on it, and NEOZAZ sticker there. But back to this. Okay, brew kettle. So it's a 10-galloner, which you can see. I mean, there's markings up to 9, which means the top's a 10th. I never had a brew kettle that could do that, so that's nice addition. And the big thing is here, 2 weld points, and I don't know if you can see in the video. Yeah, you can. They're double-sided. For this pot, I'm going to put a valve here with a dip tube so that we can get as much of the extract out as we can with the pump system and everything. And this is going to have a whirlpool attachment. Now, if you know about home brewing, you probably know that's usually where the thermostat goes. I have a stem thermostat that I'm going to place into the top of this because this, and my plans are, this will eventually become my hot liquor tank. This is not the hot liquor tank that I'm going to be using for this new system. It's kind of going to be the next phase upgrade, and when I do that, all I'll need is, oops, sorry, hit the camera, is the valve, which will be here, and then we'll put the thermometer here, and my next brew kettle will have a third weld right about here for the whirlpool. So third, version 3 brew kettle, valve, thermometer, whirlpool. But right now we're just going with the 2 to kind of prepare this for the future. I have the hardware for this. I'm actually going to put it on now. And when I come back, you'll see what the complete brew kettle for the Creature is going to look like. And here we are with the hardware additions. So, pretty simple. 2 ball valves, both with the quick disconnect. The things I had to use 2 hands for that one. Of course, I'm sure you know how a ball valve works. That open, close, of course. On the inside, I have to move this a little closer here. So at the bottom there, this right here, it's a dip tube. It's almost on the bottom. I can like barely get my fingertip under there. So that's going to get the as much of the extract out as it can with the pump, because it'll be a kind of a suction rather than a gravity feed. And then the whirlpool valve right here, that's the top. There's going to be a hose coming out of here, going into a pump, which you'll see later, going back into here to create a whirlpool that'll obviously go this way. I really wanted to go clockwise, but this stopped when I was fitting this. I mean, it is tight at the perfect angle, even if it's the opposite direction, that I was like, I don't know that I'm going to get that close, even with messing around with more Teflon tape and whatnot. So no big deal. That's what I want. It doesn't have to be, as long as it whirlpools. But we'll give it a try at this because I can't get any better angle on the first try than that. So we'll see how that goes. So let's see, what else? That blue, if you're wondering, that is not plastic. That is high temperature silicone. It's good up to 355 degrees. We, of course, know boiling is 212, so it's perfectly safe. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to it other than those couple of things. So that's the boil pot. So almost got the entire three vessel system together here. So what I'm doing now, apart from cleaning my dog's food bowl, is I'm doing a leak test on everything. Not so much the welds. I trust that they've been tested by the manufacturer, but these, because they're snug, they're hand snug, they're pretty tight, but are they tight enough to hold in all the water? That's what we're gonna find out. I hope so, because otherwise I have to take them off and start fiddling with amounts of Teflon tape to get them in this position. So I'm hoping the snug fit is good enough, at least to get up and brewing and test it. So I filled this with water up past the, well, my shadow's in the way, the whirlpool valve, as you can probably guess. I'm gonna let this sit for like 10-15 minutes, kind of take a feel, see if I feel any water, maybe run a dry paper towel across it too, and see how it is. But it looks, actually, I would expect it to, if it was a bad leak, obviously it's gonna happen right away, but this has been a couple minutes between filling it and starting up the camera. So I think we're looking good, but I'm gonna give it the ample time to test it out. So I don't know what order all these videos are going to be presented in, but I mentioned pump more than once in this, so I figured it's time. And since I was doing some modifications, not modifications, but putting some hardware on this particular pump, it'd be time to show one of them. This is the big one. This is going to be the workhorse pump. It's a 2-pump system, but the other pump is going to be, it's a teeny tiny baby pump compared to this. This is going to be doing most of the work. It's a chugger pump. It's with the stainless steel head. What hardware did I just put on? Basically, I mean, it pumps liquid, and it's super high temperature tolerant. These have been around for a long time. Comes with a great reputation. But what the additions I did are nothing extraordinary at all. Again, here's this quick disconnects we've been talking about. One over here, and the control valve on the out, so it can constantly take water in, because it's not a self-priming pump. That's not a good or bad thing, it's just what it is. So it has to have water in it or it's going to burn itself out. So this will control the flow of how fast or slow it goes through, because this will just constantly be running. But as long as there's water in here, this can restrict it, or liquid, this can restrict it to its heart's content, or it can let it wide open. So it's important to control from here, because not from here. If you control from this side and you turn it off, you're going to dry out the pump and you're going to fry it. So always if you're going to put any kind of flow control on a non-priming pump, be it a one for a brewery or one for an RV or whatnot, always put the flow control on the out. Okay, we made it to the first test brew day of the creature, and I'm going to emphasize test because, as you can probably guess, these aren't my permanent stands. I don't intend to use a TV tray. I just use that as a first reference point to see how I like the height, and it's not bad. It's a little lower. I mean, it's in arm's reach. I don't have to bend down constantly to change the hoses, but I'll probably go for something a little higher. And the test I did yesterday was a little breezy and was not blowing out the burner, as you see, which you see is right above that line there, but it was messing with it. So I think I'm going to change that. This is going to be 3 vessels eventually. I'm just doing 2 right now for a test, mainly this test for this, but this is what will be the hot liquor tank once I convert it out of valve. That's all I'm adding to it, but right now it's just going to heat up some water. I'm going to dump it in. It's going to dump like that. I don't know if that came out. I'll have to see in editing, but it'll dump into there. Mainly my test is going to be for the pump, which is still inside, and the cooling system, and the mash tun, and the boil kettle. So that's a lot of ands, just those ands. And there's some things. Sun drying, one benefit of Florida, you can sun dry anything you wash in about 4 minutes. So I'm going to keep setting up, get some water going, and see how these first new pieces work. Alright, let's see where we're at. Alright, we're a little warm, just above 169, but I'm going to call that close enough because if I stir more, we might drop too much. So I'm going to go ahead, grab the grains, and start mashing in. Alright, here's a bit of mashing in hard to do with one hand, and one hand on the bucket, one hand on the camera. I'm going to go ahead and put everything in there. There we go. I think. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, it's just basically flour in there now. So, alright, let's use the paddle to break it all up. You can see see if I scoop it up, it's kind of doughy and clumpy, but that's what the paddle with holes does. Breaks it all up, and that's that. I am going to cut this short because I'm going to give this a real good stir and get a true mash in going. So, but yeah, I think you get the idea, and you can put the term mash in to the many times I've said it on the shows before, or in the past, or in the future. Okay, so as you can hear and kind of see, I got the pump running. It's down there. Not a great setup, but it's the best I could throw together quickly. You see a little bit of grains all over because I had hooked everything up. I pulled the valve on that and nothing happened. So I assumed there's something wrong with that valve. So I took that hose off and opened the valve, and sploosh, all those grains and wort came out. It was just one quick splash. Turns out, because I had that valve closed, it was completely airlocked, so it couldn't flow at all out through there. So as soon as I opened that up, let it flow and prime the pump, I was good to go. So I'm going to run this for 7 minutes, and what should happen is, actually it's noticeably clearer than when I started. The grain bed under here is going to serve as a filter, and then we're going to have some nice clear extract come out of here, and a lot less proteins and matter and stuff that you don't want in your fermenter, or that you're going to be racking off, but less of that in the primary fermenter when we get started. So I'm just kind of waiting out the timer at this point. Should take about 7 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I think I mentioned I was vorloffing first with the pump, but I might not have really explained what that was. And what it is you want to get the beer you're taking out of here as clear as possible before you put it into your boil kettle. And literally what you do is just drain it and pump it back in, and let the grains, which is, there's 13 pounds, 13.25 pounds actually at the rice hulls, work as a natural filter, like an aquifer. I mean, that sounds like a weird comparison, but it's true. And I still got about 1.5 minutes to go, but let me show you. I'm going to have to do a cut here and edit how clear this actually works. So here's, I think, a better shot than just what's coming out of there, but that is like crystal clear. There is nothing in there but just a little bit of air bubbles floating around, and that's like exactly what you want to put in. Oop, I almost dropped that. This is really difficult to do. Only 2 hands, wish I had a third hand, but that is what you're trying to do with the Vorloff. And it's going to go for another 1.5 minutes, and then we're going to start pumping it into the boil kettle, and then really get into making beer. Alright, here we go. The extract, which is what it's called as it's coming out of the mash tun over here. It is the extract, because we're not at wort yet. That's when you add the hops. Being pumped into here, into this boil kettle. What I'm ultimately going to do is attach it to probably the bottom valve, and fill it from the bottom up, but right now I'm focusing on one aspect of this at a time, and today's aspect for these valves is going to be whirlpooling, which we'll get to. So just going to get the extract in here. We're going to boil out all the air. It's splashing in there anyway, so that's not a problem. And then we'll give these valves the stress test when the whirlpool comes. So I got 7 gallons, which is usually like the bare minimum I need. I would like to see 8, which I think I can get, but I wanted to show you something because I stopped the pump to let everything settle down and maybe get some more extract out of this. But I wanted to show you the top of the grain bed, and as you can see, it looks like kind of sandy, like there's a lot of small particles, and that's exactly what I was showing with the Vorloff. That's how it filters out everything and gets that extract super clear. So once I saw that, I thought, oh, there's a good follow-up to why the Vorloff. All that like dusty, floury, almost paste-like stuff on top there would have made it into the boil kettle without the Vorloff. Alright, we're at 7.5. I'm really hoping for 8, and this all just caught my eye and thought if you're watching you might wonder what that is, because they look like soap bubbles. They're not soap bubbles. That is the residue left over from the sanitation rinse, the sanitation dip, what do you want to call it? I guess the run through of the tubes. So there's sanitizer left in there, and it's no rinse sanitizer, and the foam actually kind of it's a little more than soap. It's actually kind of cool looking. There's different colors, but that is foam from the sanitizer, perfectly safe, odorless, flavorless, and it's gonna boil right out. But it looks soapy until you really look at the colors, and it actually looks kind of cool. Actually, let me hit the pump. See if we can get 8 gallons. There we go. And when this is done, I'm going to take a still shot of that and make that my phone wallpaper background, because that's really cool. All right. Keep your fingers crossed we get another half gallon, because if we got 8, we are golden. We're good. We got more than enough, not more than enough. We have just enough to work with. 8 gives us more than enough to work with. All right. If you can see that, there's a big glare for me. Okay, I can see the 9, so you can see we are over 8, almost 8.5. I was coming up on 8.5, and the flow out of the mash tun stopped, so I turned off the pump. That is, now we are definitely more than enough, and I'm hoping we're actually not a little short as far as the gravity, but that's really not that we're talking. Gravity is a whole other thing. I'm talking that leads to alcohol percentage. That is the least of my goals of hitting the alcohol percentage on this, so I don't care, and I don't think about a third of a gallon is going to make a difference. But there we are, and I'm going to fire up the burner, because this is a lot. As you can see, I mean, I have to go back even further. That is a lot of liquid to get up to 212 degrees. So this might be fun. I'm not sure. I went out to the beer fridge to get a beer to enjoy while waiting for the boil, and I just mentioned 12 parsecs on the audio, I guess even edition of this show, because I'm recording kind of 2 different shows. One for you on Patreon, and then the regular Is It Beer Yet? I mentioned this beer, and I found this bomber. It's a 22-ounce bottle that I forgot I'd made bombers almost a year ago, in preparing for people to come to Celebration and try this beer, and I don't know that it was even going to hold up, so I'm going to give it a try. This is one of the first beers I bottled with a beer gun. Didn't know what I was doing. I'll be surprised if there's any carbonation at all, and I'm curious what the taste is going to be like, because it was brewed as an IPA. I'm going to guess the hops are gone after a year of having been made, kegged, bottled, and then probably the hops have died out in this. And it's also fortified with moonshine, because we didn't hit our alcohol percentage just on malts, so I fortified it with moonshine. So first, let's see if I can open it with my NEOZAZ.com bottle opener and see if there's even a hiss. Oh, there's a little tiny hiss, if you didn't hear that. Oh, I don't think I've ever done this one-handed before. There we go. So let's give it a pour. There's like no carbonation, which I was kind of afraid of. This was at the height of my having trouble with carbonation. I'm trying to make some kind of, there's some in there, but that head's gonna die so quick. So with that little bit head, let me get the aroma while it's still there. Okay, yeah, the hops are gone. There's like no hoppy aroma. The thing I smell most is the alcohol kind of burning off in the air already because of that moonshine that's in there. But surprisingly, it's not sour. And I actually can smell both alcohols, the moonshine and the beer, and a little bit of malty aroma in there. So I'm going to give it a taste. I'm not going to drink this whole thing, because even if it's drinkable, I'm not drinking a 22-ounce over 9% fortified beer. There's a little staleness on the finish, so I think it got a little oxidized in the transfer, but it's not cardboard, so I think it's just plain stale. Not as much as boozy as I thought it was going to be. It's a little boozy, but not much. I'm going to try just a little more. Yeah, it's boozy and malty. Hops, there is no hops. They are gone. They're completely gone. But I'm actually surprised it's still survived and not infected, it wouldn't be infected at this point. But it's a little stale. That's funny. There's enough carbonation that I can kind of bring, not really. I can't really bring the head back to life, but I can stir up some carbonation. I'm surprised at that. But I'm not surprised at the fact that there wasn't any pouring it out initially. So, oh boy, I haven't had that for a year, and things have changed since I brewed this. For the better, I'm happy to say. Alright, what else makes beer? Hops. And I wish I had recorded this before I put them in the hop bag, but I already did the first drop and recorded that for the audio edition. But for this video edition, for the Patreon exclusive, let me show you how to add hops. Really complicated. You do this, and then you do this. Yeah, there you go. I waited 45 minutes to do that, but we're making beer now, and we're getting down to the final minutes, and that's just, it's, someone once said brewing beer is 2 hours of work packed into an 8-hour day, and they are right, because we are approaching the 6th hour of the day. By the time I'm done cleaning, it'll be 8 hours, and the actual physical activity I've done so far has probably been 30 minutes, but we're about to unload another 30 minutes of Fast and Furious work. That wasn't a reference to a movie I haven't seen or a ride that's not open yet at Universal, just a thing that came to mind. Alright, just to give you a little look at where we're at in the boil, we're down to the last, I'm looking at my watch, 7 minutes, just over 7 minutes, and what I just did was put in a Warflock tablet, which is a form of Irish moss and some congealants to make a tablet that, I didn't pronounce that right, I know. And what it's doing is combining all the proteins in the wort to make them heavy so they fall to the bottom so that they don't make it into the fermenter. And this copper, the tubes that you can see, this is my wort chiller. This is going to cool this down hopefully very quickly. I've never used it before. It's not that the... my faith is in a wort chiller. I've seen it work. My faith is, or my hopes are on how I get cold water to the wort chiller. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Actually, you know, I just realized you saw this in the video. I'm confused on what show I'm doing here. So you saw this. So this is the Jaded Hydra. It's in there because it's sanitizing. 10 minutes of boiling water, it's going to kill everything that's on there. So it's sanitizing, and I'm down to just over 6 minutes, so I'm going to prepare for the last hop drop. And then we're going to play with the pump some more, and with these two valves, and get a whirlpool going, and see how that works out. Okay, things got a little hectic at the end. In the last 10 minutes, I had a lot of things to do at once, but that chiller worked phenomenal. It was crazy how fast it chilled. The whirlpool, that needs some work, but that's also not the final boil kettle. I got everything into the fermenter in record time, and I pitched the yeast, and the temperature is still leveling out. This device should find the temperature of about 67 degrees before it needs to really do anything, and I've set it for 59 degrees. This can do that. This can pull the heat out to 59. The range of fermentation on this particular yeast is 60 to 70. So I'm going to start at 60. After the initial vigorous fermentation takes off, I'm going to dial it up a degree every day until we hit 70, and then back into the secondary. So that's about it. That is making beer at NEOZAZ right now. It's ever changing and about to change a little more, but that's the first test with 2 of the vessels of the new brewery. One needs some work, that's the mash tun because of that leak. The other one needs some tweaking. There's probably something I can do to make that whirlpool a little stronger, but I may not need to until we get the new brew kettle, but the new edition of it in version 3 of the brewery. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this. Bit of a Patreon special. Didn't really know where I was going when I started this, but in the end, that's how we make beer. I'll probably be back when the beer's ready and talk about how it came out.